everybody. We are going to do some cooking today, and no matter what style of cooking you want to serve your guests, we can use this recipe. You can use it as a side dish. You can use it for a brunch as the main course. There are several ways to use this recipe, and this is the perfect time of year for it. We're right in the middle of summer, and what does summer produce? Plenty of tomatoes, and that's what we're going to make today is a tomato pie. So what you'll need for this recipe is, of course, tomatoes. So you'll need, say, 4 to 6 tomatoes, depending on the size. You know, some of these are much smaller than others, and you'll want them to be ripe but firm. You don't want a tomato that is overripe because it'll just make your pie mushy. And so try to find the ones that are ripe but have not gotten to that mushy point. You will need 9-inch pie crust, and I use a pie crust that you get at the grocery, the Pillsbury pie crust. But if you have a really good homemade pie crust recipe, use that because it will be even better. You will need a half a cup of mayo, and you will need cheddar cheese. Now, this time when I make it, I'm trying something a bit different. I'm not using cheddar cheese. I was looking for a cheese that's not quite as tangy as a cheddar, and I really wanted a white cheddar but couldn't find it, so I'm using this Italian blend of shredded cheese, and that is a bit of mozzarella. It has Romano, Parmesan, Fontina, and Asiago cheeses, and I think there's some provolone also. Well, you want it shredded because that way it melts so much better. You don't want sliced cheese, but if you use the traditional cheddar cheese, be sure you get the shredded. And you'll need salt, pepper, garlic powder. Oh yes, and you'll want some basil. And fresh basil is always better than dry basil, so if you can find fresh basil or you grow your own, be sure and use that. And so let's preheat our oven to 350 degrees. Now I'm going to begin by slicing tomatoes, and what I do is place the sliced tomatoes on a paper towel that's on a cookie sheet because I'm trying to wick out the moisture in the tomato. So let's get started. These have all been washed, so I'm going to slice these, and you don't want them super thin. You want them, let's say, 1/4 to 1/2 inch in thickness, and I'm going to leave the peel on so that they hold their shape. We're going to be baking this anyway, and that will soften up that peel. You can see the thickness that I am using. You can go a tiny bit thinner, but I wouldn't go super thin, because then it's going to taste more like a cheese pie if you don't have enough tomato in it. Now this is a very traditional Southern recipe. It's perfect for whatever style you are serving your guests, whether it's a casual on the patio get together and you want to just put it out for those to nibble on, or you're having a nice little brunch. It can be the main course on a brunch, and then you can also serve it as a side dish for a dinner party. And I'm using all the little bits of the tomato. So what I'm going to do, you'll see, is place this tomato on these paper towels, and you can see the moisture's already wicking out of these. Okay, we have all our tomatoes sliced, and what I do is put additional paper towels on top, and then I press it to get the moisture out, and I set it aside. And now let's chop our basil, because we're going to need it for the filling for the pie. I was trying to come up with the best term for that. I think filling is probably the best one I can use. This is very much like a quiche, except you don't use eggs. Of course, there's eggs in your mayonnaise, but it's not that much different than a quiche. So let's chop our basil. So take your basil and just roll it a bit so you can chop it much easier. It's just a rough chop. You don't want it to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be super tiny. And you might save just a few leaves to place on top just for the garnish on top of your pie. Actually, I think I'm going to use this cute little fillet of basil on top of the pie. The rest is going inside. And I'm going to do a super rough cut. And there we have it. Put that aside because we're going to need it for our filling. It's a mess there. We'll set that inside and we have our basil. Now, don't overdo it on the basil. You saw I only used maybe 5 leaves of basil because you don't want it to be overpowered. Let's make our filling. So let's start with our 8 ounces of cheese. And remember, it's cheddar cheese. However, I was going to use the white cheddar, could not find it, and I'm using a mixture of cheeses that I think will be great. Like I said, I don't want to use all mozzarella because I think it would be a little too stringy, so I got this to mix up with it. Then we are going to use half a cup of mayonnaise, and this just binds it all together. So you'll have a nice creamy filling. Now when I put things in the sink, I know it sounds like it is a total racket. Well, that is a hammered copper sink, and when I drop something in it, no matter what it is loud. I love it sometimes, and other times I don't, especially when it's time to clean it. That is really not the easiest thing to clean, is a copper sink. So I'm mixing this together, and then I'm going to add a generous pinch of pepper, ground black pepper. I'm going to add a sprinkle, now this is terrible measurements, but a sprinkle of salt and a generous sprinkle of, let's say a half a teaspoon of garlic powder. Okay, now we've got that. Actually, I may put a bit more garlic powder. Let's go with about a teaspoon. And we can see it's a nice, creamy, cheesy mixture. Now I'm going to add our basil, except the one I'm using for garnish. Put a teeny bit more garlic powder on that. I just don't want to overwhelm it with garlic and a little pepper. Isn't that beautiful? You are going to love this. The combination of basil and tomato and cheese, you can't go wrong. And you put that in a pie crust and bake it for a while, and it is delicious. Now let's switch up, and we're going to use our pie pan. It's a 9-inch pie pan, and I'm going to use the pre-made pie crust. Now, you can make this with one of the pie crust, and it is wonderful. But, let's see if we can get these out. But these Pillsbury pie crusts come 2 to a package. And so if one pie crust is good, 2 pie crusts are even better. So I am going to use both of them. And there's another reason that I'm doing that. Not just because it is a little bit more thick on the bottom and a little more tasty, it's because with those two pie crusts, I know I won't use the remaining pie crust for a long time, and even though I can freeze it, I think I'd rather put it with this pie. So I'm going to pinch this up in a moment, but let's do both. And you don't have to use both. I am. It's just like the cheddar cheese. I'm trying a different cheese this time than the cheddar. So I thought, well, I'm cooking today. This is actually going to be our dinner, and I'm cooking this, and I'm going to just go ahead and show you how I do it. So I'm doubling the crust, and I'm molding it, and this is ungreased pie pan, and I'm going to make little pinches along the way just to make it decorative and it sticks to the side of the pan better. And those of you who cook often know these little tricks, but I do have a lot of viewers who don't cook often, or they're just learning how to cook. So I add those little tidbits of information in there. It may seem simple to some of us, but to others it's not. Now we have that just about ready. Let's see. Let's add another little. See, we have that molded to the pie pan. Just like that. Now we're going to bring back our tomatoes. And you can see I have stacked them up with the paper towels, and they should be fairly dry now. See what I've done? You don't see them as moist as they were, because like I said, we don't want it mushy. So we're going to start by layering our tomatoes on the bottom. And we have plenty, so we don't want to be skimpy. That's about as, there's a little piece right here. Let's put that here. And then we are going to layer that. I need a larger spoon. I can't find my spatula, but I did get a wooden spoon. I'm hoping that's going to be easier to work with than that deep spoon. So you use about half of your mixture on this one layer, because you're going to put another layer of tomatoes and one more layer of the filling. All these gorgeous tomatoes. Wow. And you can use the ones that aren't so perfectly sliced inside. And all those little bits I put in there. And then I'm going to use, here's my clanky sink again. I've tried to put a dish towel in the bottom so when I make these recipes you don't hear that clanking. It doesn't help. It's just clanky. So this is our second layer of filling. We're going to try to get it smoothed out. And I don't want it to be over the top of the crust on the side. We want our crust to be pretty. Now one more layer of tomatoes, and let's make these pretty ones. I'm going to put one right there in the center, and then I'm going to garnish with the basil sprig. There we go. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? And it hasn't even cooked yet. We're going to cook it at 350 degrees for 35 or 45 minutes until the cheese is real nice and bubbly. Oh my, look at this. That is incredible. Let's cut into it and see what we have. Look at this. We have the flaky crust, the layers of tomato and cheese, and oh my gosh, that looks so good. The basil, yummy. Ah. Look at this. You are going to love it. I'm going to put the entire recipe below, and let's give it a taste. Your guests and family are going to thank you for this. Look at this cheese. Very good. So, we have our salad. We add some cucumber to that. And a touch of salad dressing. And you can use this recipe for just about any occasion. Isn't that fabulous? I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have, please give it a thumbs up. And if you are not a subscriber, remember you can tap that subscribe button, and don't forget, you can follow me on Instagram. Bye!